Hi, welcome to today's third episode for the season of Simply Stated Ghost Stories here in Lake Michigan. I'm at the beach today. I'm not in Traverse City. This series actually has been filmed primarily outside of Traverse City, actually on Lake Michigan, a different regional that I've filmed and done a lot of other episodes at previously. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about a little bit of the recent news with Sean Combs, otherwise known as P. Diddy, the rapper, being arrested this past week and finally put into whatever jail temporarily. But we're going to go through some of the ghost stories related to it and some of the ghoulish stuff that happened actually back into the 90s in Janesville, Wisconsin. I say all this as I sit at the beach with my raspberry lemonade and sunscreen and try to enjoy what should be basically a nice day heading into the more weird type of season that we are going into with Halloween, which I actually really enjoy. But fall is what it is. We already discussed the reasons for that seasonally. Um, I could have my little black like gothic rose for this. Um, One thing some people know about me or didn't know was that during the time I lived in Janesville, Wisconsin, I was pushed into a relationship with a man that you know, Sean Connery, the actor. He's now dead. It was by Cersei and Willem. It was some kind of bizarre setup. You know, in all of his movies for James Bond, he used to say shaken, not stirred, the martini shaker. The point of that was that he got information out of the martini shaker when the bartender shook it for him. It's a really weird fact, but it's kind of something that's important to know about people who work as spies. How does that fall into the bizarreness of the P. Diddy sort of cult life with the KGB and all of that? Well, they're actually more obsessed with that kind of behavior than anybody. So it was actually an incorrect assertion in some of the films. And frankly, having known Sean Connery myself, he posed as a man named Dr. Lambert, PhD, who works as a psychologist with kids at the University of Wisconsin. And he actually set up a number of kids to be abused there through the different cult groups that the KGB, now called the FSB of Russia, was running in the US. And the fake friendly set up in Hollywood. And unfortunately, set me up quite a bit. And, you know, was somebody who made disgusting comments like that. He hoped I wouldn't sort of be stupid enough to um, you know, be going through life like the woman in the book, Mr. Waiting for Mr. Goodbar, looking for Mr. Goodbar, like the candy. Oh no, that was upside down. There we go, looking for Mr. Goodbar, the candy, which is made by Hershey's, a company of candy that Cersei and Wilhelm always favored. I'll give them this one promo, but they told me they liked it because it tasted like poop. So even Reese's, my once favorite candy, I'd literally just like throw out. The problem with John Connery, he was just incredibly misogynistic and tied up in the gangsteriness himself to the point where I even started to think he was just another member of the Russian mafia. He also was, unfortunately, the person that the U.S. government sent to work in Iran that was supposed to have protected Iran and the U.S. assets, instead just ended up totally undermining the country in favor of working for Booz Allen Hamilton. So that's something people don't really know about him, is that he actually worked for that company, which is a Russian FSB Chinese CCP company, and they actually have offices still in the U.S. and frankly fight with the U.S. government pretty regularly. And what's important to understand about all of this is that Wilhelm, the man who posed as my father when I was living in James, Wisconsin, of course, I managed to get away from the bizarre arrangement that had been put into place for me by Kendrick with Sean Connery for a while through CAA, of course. Kendrick split from CAA. In this last recent year, people from CA have actually come through for me and helped me out. I did not have a contract, I did not work for them. But that during the years I lived in Janesville, Wisconsin, there was all the bizarre fights. Um, you know, Wilhelm was actually having people over the home, and one of the people we had over to the home to hang out and play around in the basement with the HVAC system and electrocute people was actually a man you know now today as P. Diddy. And that P. Diddy actually learned a lot of his cult behaviors from Wilhelm and from Cersei, who worked for the FSB of Russia. So right now you're seeing a lot of obfuscation in the media with, you know, talking about baby lotion, all this other stuff, and you're not really getting into the full story of the fact that, you know, we're talking about Beyonce with her Freakum Dress song that Buffalo Bill had written for her. I've already given you Buffalo Bill's actual name. I do not feel comfortable releasing Kendrick's name for the series simply because um, Kendrick's a pretty dangerous person and has murdered people in front of me, and I already went through enough pain and suffering over trying to deal with that. I also went through more than enough trying to help other people out because I just found like it seems like so many people just don't understand what the complexity of what they're dealing with when you're talking about a person that's actually running a cult group based around a signet system. And it's always pretty obvious when people are members of it because they end up immediately assuming people are like, say somebody's at the CIA or they've been trained in military intelligence or they must be a cop simply because your morals and values and you're not completely stupid. Like, it just can't get any more ridiculous. But, going back to the point that during those years, Sean Connery said they were going to set up P. Diddy to take the fall. And even before I left DC, after all those working years of frustrating years of investigation, there was this issue with people not wanting to accept the reality that sooner or later they were going to have to arrest Buffalo Bill and they were also going to have to arrest Kendrick. And it just simply wasn't going to be acceptable to stop with just arresting a guy who appears to be a black person that's actually probably part of the Russian and Iranian communities and not really part of the U.S. communities at all. It certainly has nothing to do with or anything in common with the experience of people who have black ancestry here in the U.S. And that was very happy to learn disgusting and gross interrogation techniques and tactics from the old KGB there in NSM Cambridge Drive. I mean, that's the weird part. I met P. Diddy before he became P. Diddy because he used to hang out at the house. But he's very comfortable with people that you would consider to be overly white. Okay, if you want to get stereotypical and racist, that Kendrick would make more sense to people if you re-nicknamed him like Victor Ramos, because apparently we only understand somebody's really bad a drug dealer when they have some bizarre racially inspired Hispanic name instead of their super white alias that they've chosen living in the U.S. and they're actually just some Russian drug lord. This is all very ghoulish stuff because you're talking about hundreds of people injured and beaten and traumatized by a cult group. And, that stopping today with everything just because simply P. Diddy's now in prison and apparently on suicide watch really isn't enough. You want a scary ghost story. It's that I spent 19 years of stories and talks and investigations and life events in the DC area only to have the US government tell me that they wouldn't get any further than arresting P. Diddy, which means we really do need help from the Australian government and the English because we have a very serious problem with at least two major companies here in the US that don't have the support of the other major US companies or the rest of the world and their behaviors. And the only thing that's really seemed to slow Kendrick down at this point was the fact that YG, an Asian company, purchased into part of his company. So he can't just do whatever he wants anymore. That's when the private sector has actually caused him to be more limited. So these are all the things I kind of want you to know. As far as Sean Connery goes, he was tied to a number of murders of women over the years during his Bond films. There's number one that just simply died. And nobody could ever figure it out. And what I got out of talking with him and the time I had to forced to spend with him, whatever that was, during my formative years, he was somebody that, he fully believed in the cult mentality. He fully believed in people being forced into signet systems and having to live their lives that way. And he had no support for women's lives or children at all. I mean, he just gave none. And was all about just giving his guys, like, whatever. And originally I thought that he expected me to actually be able to go through my investigation to get my freedom down the DC area. But he was someone who was very stupid to me and told me that I would just have to provide sex. And that I didn't really have a right to survive or live. And that he thought that, that he was okay to pose as a child psychologist and just completely abuse children and adults. And that he fully supported the KGB tactics. So, I can't think of anything more horrifying than somebody pretending to be a therapist and abusing people. And I mean, a little bit. I mean, he was all about full-on electrocution, and it's pretty much all I have to say about it. That he was basically just another member of this ridiculous cult group, and thought in the end they would just blame some guy who was just a middleman, which is all P. Diddy really is. Anyway, so that's been this edition of Simply Said Ghost Stories for you here by the beach. Thank you.